Here we are, the final one. We're at the lineages now. So first off, for people who don't know what lineages are, let's just quickly go into what they are. Lineages are races that a character might gain through remarkable events. Lineages will overshadow a character's original race, if any, becoming their new race. A lineage will replace racial features, but you'll still pretty much kind of look somewhat similar to whatever race your character might have originated as. A character might choose a lineage during character creation, their transformation having occurred before play begins, or events might unfold during the adventure that lead your character to replacing their race with this new lineage. Work with your DM to establish if you're amiable to such a development and how such stories unfold. At first level, you choose whether your character is a member of the human race or one of the game's fantastical races. Alternatively, you can choose one of the following lineages. If you choose a lineage, you might have once been a member of another race, but you aren't any longer. You now possess only the lineage's racial traits. The lineages that are going to be in this book are as follows. They are going to be the Hexed, the Nothing, okay, Penny, the Kamala, and the Kolsk Infected. Hi. Am I talking too much for you? She's tired. She's tired a lot. It's because I'm sitting around working on this, and she wants to do all the things she can do. But let's go ahead and get into this. So first off, the Hexed. A Hexed is a person who has had their soul split into two, one half being them, the other half being what is known as a Nothing. One can only become a Hexed after one's soul has been split in half. The original body becomes what is called a Hexed, which appears as a ghostly version of their previous self. And your Nothing, the other half of your soul, and if your Nothing, the other half of your soul, is killed, then that half of your soul joins your body again, restoring your body back to its original self and race, losing this lineage. So this is the picture we have of a Hexed. It's a little strange. It's hard to really get it, but you'll see once we get the Nothing. The Hexed and Nothings usually look pretty similar to each other in some way. And you'll see this when we get to the Nothing. But so as a Hexed, your ability score improvements, your Constitution modifier is increased. Your Constitution score is increased by 2, and your Charisma score is increased by 1. Because you are only half souled, you have resistance to psychic damage. You get 60 feet of dark vision. Your age and size are both dependent on what your race was before you became a Hexed. Your base movement speed is 30 feet. And then you have a feature called Weakened Soul. Because of your halved soul, all psychic damage you deal to other creatures is halved. So these do not make good characters that would deal psychic damage. Then they have a feature called Hunted. You're always hunted by your other half. A Hexed usually doesn't know that they have been cursed, and those that usually don't know that they are only half, and that they have the other half existing out there somewhere. As in such with the Hexed and Nothing lore, Hexed typically, like I just said, typically they don't know that they have been cursed and are only half of a soul, and that they are being hunted by their Nothing, which a Nothing knows that they are half of a soul, and they know that the Hexed exists, and their goal is to become whole again, depending on which one dies. So if you're Hexed and Nothing, if the Nothing half the soul goes back to the Hexed, and they become back to their original self again. If the Hexed dies, that half of the soul goes to the Nothing, and the Nothing personality becomes the new full soul built together. So essentially, an entirely different character could exist depending on which one happens. As a Hex, your creature type is humanoid and undead. Spells that don't work on dead would still work on you, however, such as a few healing spells. And the last feature a Hex get is To Be Whole. When the Nothing for you dies, your other half comes back to you, and you return to the race that you were before you became a Hexed, with the memories of both you as the Hexed and the Nothing version of you. So if we're going to talk about the Hexed and Nothing being hand in hand, this is the Hexed, And this is going to be the nothing. A nothing is a copy of a person who has had their soul split. The original body that was yours is under the control of a hex, and your body was a copy made for you to take over. Nothing's body can look like anything, though you're still humanoid, and it will still resemble somewhat part of the look that your hexed embodies. One can only become a nothing after one's soul has been split in half. The original body becomes a hexed, and your half becomes very similar to the race that you were before, and taking the form, but also taking a form which you would have previously coveted before your soul became split. So this, like I said, this is the art for a nothing. See, similar to the hex, but different enough. This one is this one's male, and the other one is female, which they can look a little different. But they still look somewhat similar. So as a nothing, your wisdom score increases by 2, and your constitution score increases by 1. You also have the half soul, so you're resistant to psychic damage. 60 feet of dark vision. Your movement, your age and your size are still the exact same as the race you were before. Your base movement speed is 30 feet. Your creature type is humanoid. The nothings are not considered undeads, they are just considered humanoids. And you also deal half psychic damage because you're only half of a soul. And you have a feature called Hunter. You are the hunter in the game of cat and mouse with your hexed. You will do whatever it takes to get your other half back. You have advantage on tracking your hexed. In addition, you gain the Hunter's Mark spell, and if used on your hexed, you can add 1 additional damage dice. You can cast the spell once without expending any components, and you regain that use after finishing a long rest. And when your hex dies, you get your half of the soul back and become whole again, and you become what race you were before you were split. So the hex and the nothing, they work hand in hand, kind of opposite of hand in hand, but they are built hand in hand together they are literally 2 halves of someone who was whole that were split. This makes for great storyline wise to have one of your players be a hexed and is being hunted down by this nothing, and they don't know much about it, and they'll learn more about it as the campaign goes on, learn that this nothing is the other half of them, but they will not stop until the hexed is dead. So either you have to kill the other half of yourself to become whole again, or you let it kill you and it becomes whole again. It can become somewhat of a moral dilemma because they have the nothings have the want and need to feel whole, while the hex can sometimes feel like they're already whole and they don't need it. They don't necessarily need it, but they're being hunted for it. So it can make for some interesting dilemmas, and straight up just choosing it. You can just choose a lineage and pretty much get some good character backstory and some good driving factors into a campaign that way. So the next lineage we're going to talk about is the Kamala. A Kamala is a humanoid that has become demonic upon the destruction of one's soul. A Kamala looks similar to what they used to be, but very demonic, with claws, talons, and typically paler skin. One can only become a Kamala after one's soul has been burned away and destroyed. There are many ways for one's soul to become destroyed. Leave it up to the DM for how your soul may have gotten destroyed and your body became demonic and evil. There is one way in this book to become a Kamala. That way is the Weaver class. We'll get to it eventually. That class, one of its core features is the way its magic works. When the Weaver burns up enough of their magic, they have a chance of turning into a Kamala and losing access to their magic. So it's a risk. That's one of the ways of turning into Kamala. There's a spell in this book that can split someone's soul to turn someone into a hex and a nothing. And the Kolsk infected, there is in the creature areas, like we said, the Kolsk in the Kolsk lore video we had a few months ago. That is how one could become a Kolsk infected. But anyway, this is the art of a Kamala. We're gonna go and get straight into it. That's a Kamala. Your constitution and your strength both increase by 2. This is not typical. Nothing ever gets 4. Nothing ever gets a +4. because a total of +4. But we're getting there. Your base movement speed is 30 feet. Your size and age are equal to the race that you were before. And greater perception. Kamalas have advantage on perception checks that rely on hearing. And in addition, you can hear whenever magic is being cast, so long as it has a verbal component, within 5 miles of you. So you can almost always tell when someone is casting a spell, so long as it has a somatic component, when they're nearby you. So sometimes it could get a little obnoxious. They have a feature called Talons and Claws. Instead of fingers, you have 3 talons that deal 1d6 plus your strength modifier and slashing damage. And instead of feet, you have 3 long claws. Which give you a climbing speed of 30 feet. Now the next feature they have is Burned Soul. A Kamala's soul has been destroyed. As such, a Kamala cannot use the spellcasting or Weaver soul casting ability. However, a Kamala can still use the Pact Magic feature. But essentially, so Kamalas, they can be no spellcasters at all, except for Warlocks and Arcanists, because that magic does not come from them. It is not exactly sourced through them. It is otherworldly powers. So they're very limited, is that they just cannot really cast magic if you're a Kamala. So despite the fact it has a +2 to strength and +2 to con, very good. And the hearing spells casted in 5 miles of you, very good. But you cannot cast any spells yourself unless it's pact magic. So it's a little rough. A little rough there. The next is the Soulless Demonics. After finishing a long rest, a Kamala must make a wisdom save. The DC for the save is a 15. On a fail, the Kamala loses control of themselves and becomes under the control of the DM and will become monstrous. This save can be remade at the next long rest. There is the flaw, the major flaw. The other one was still a pretty good flaw, but this is a major flaw of this lineage. You, most of the time, will lose control of yourself, and you will be under the control of the DM. You can play a Kamala if you want to. You can have that really cool thing of getting that insane bonus being able to hear any spells being cast. You'd make a great monk, in fact. However, you better never fail that wisdom save. Because if you fail that wisdom save, anything can happen. Depends on your DM. Depends on how good your DM is with how nice your DM is with you. And as for the creature type, a Kamala is both humanoid and a fiend, not just pure humanoid. So things that would be more effective against fiends, such as Divine Smite, would be more effective against you. Kamalas are very dark, and you've lost your soul, which makes the Kamala typically more dangerous when being seen if people know what a Kamala is. But with that, we're going to get onto the last lineage, which is the Kolsk Infected. Someone who is a Kolsk Infected could have been any previous race, but they were once infected with the Kolsk infection, either by a parasite, spreader, or a Kolsk dragon. And the infection was stopped before it was able to be completed. However, the changes to your body do not revert even after becoming cured. Depending on how long you were infected, depends on how large the biopods on your body are. If you were infected for 1 to 2 weeks, you have a few minor pods on your body. If you were infected for 3 to 4 weeks, you are covered in a few large biopods. A few small biopods. In addition, you have bones and tendrils of Kolsk bile sprouting from your body. Very much like this art of a Kolsk infected elf. It becomes pretty dark and pretty kind of sad as well, because you'll never be the same again. You always have these features on you, and everyone knows that you once had probably a pretty rough time with this stuff and might not be trusted because you might be still infected, some people might think. But it is pretty little dark and a little bit of body horror-ish. I apologize. I will try to remember to put a body horror warning before this lineage comes up. With the Kolsk infected traits, we're going to get into it. As a Kolsk infected, your constitution score increases by 2, your wisdom increases by 1, you have a base walking speed of 30 feet, Your size and age are equal to the race you were before becoming infected. You have a feature called temporary hive connection. From your time of being infected, you have a minor telepathy. You have telepathy out to a range of 60 feet. In addition, you can tell if another Kolsk creature is within your telepathy range, including if someone is infected with Kolsk. You also have dark vision out to 60 feet as well, and as a creature type, you are both humanoid and a monstrosity. And then last, you have a feature known as Unsettling Presence, as a few other things already have this. As an action, you can unsettle a creature you can see within 15 feet of you. The target has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes within the next minute. Constructs, undead, and creatures that can't be frightened are immune to this feature. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So that is the Kolsk Infected, a more balanced one, but with a darker look. And with that, we're fully done with the races, with all 21 races and all 4 lineages. Honestly, I thought it was going to take longer to get through it than it actually did. But with that, all those now being done, we can move on and finish up the classes now. We were about halfway through the classes. The next class we're going to be talking about is going to be the Rune Carver, which is going to be a little bit interesting. It's definitely the most customizable class in this book, and I say that knowing full well the Arcanist is able to literally just create any spell or magical effect they want. I know very well that they can do that. The Rune Carver is extremely customizable, and will be very interesting when we get to it. But with that, we're going to call it for the day. I don't even remember where my dog left.